In the hollow echoes of ceaseless pursuit, a silent erosion begins, not of the world outside but of the very ground beneath your own feet. How many dawns have broken, only to find you at the doorstep of another's affirmation, a quiet mendicant of affection, the yearning, a persistent hum in the marrow, whispers of a salvation found only in external gaze, in the mirrored reflection of desired belonging. Yet, what if that mirror is distorted, its surface rippling with the unreliability of transient sentiment? What if the very act of reaching out, hand trembling, becomes a slow surrender of your inherent light? This desperate choreography, this perpetual dance of supplication, leaves scars unseen, not on the skin but on the fragile architecture of the self. Each unreciprocated gesture, each unspoken plea, chisels away a sliver of sovereignty, leaving behind a phantom ache. It's a weight, this longing, heavier than any physical burden, for it pins the spirit to a hope that dims with every unchosen moment. To beg for love is to deny the vastness of your own internal sky, to shrink your universe to the confines of another's fleeting attention. It is to cede the throne of your own being, abandoning the quiet majesty of self-possession for the crumbs of borrowed warmth. The question isn't whether love exists, but whether you exist authentically and fiercely, without its external validation. And in that raw, unadorned existence, where does the begging truly lead? To what kind of freedom? To what kind of self? To choose oneself is not an act of defiant isolation, but a homecoming. It is the recognition of an internal landscape, vast and untamed, that has too long been overshadowed by the desperate search for external validation. This choice is a quiet revolution, a turning inward from the clamor of expectation and the subtle tyranny of yearning. It demands an honest gaze into the mirror of self, not to seek perfection, but to acknowledge the intricate tapestry of flaws and strengths that form your unique composition. The weight of others' perceptions, once a crushing burden, begins to lift, replaced by the sturdy foundation of self-acceptance. This isn't about arrogance. It's about integrity. It's about building a sanctuary within, a space where your spirit can breathe unburdened by the relentless pursuit of approval. The act of choosing yourself is an ongoing excavation, unearthing buried truths and reclaiming discarded fragments of your authentic essence. It is a slow, deliberate act of love, perhaps the most profound love you will ever cultivate, for it reshapes the very contours of your reality. And in this radical embrace of your own being, a different kind of magnetism emerges, one that draws not from need, but from the quiet confidence of wholeness. The illusion of scarcity fuels the endless quest for external validation. We are taught, subtly or overtly, that love is a finite resource, bestowed upon the worthy by those who possess it. This perception cultivates a desperate hunger, a fear of being left empty, unchosen, and ultimately, unloved. It leads to the quiet compromises, the dimming of one's own light to fit into another's shadow, the constant shaping and reshaping of self to meet an imagined ideal. But what if this scarcity is a grand deception? What if the wellspring of love resides not outside but within, a boundless reservoir waiting to be tapped? To choose yourself is to challenge this ingrained scarcity, to dismantle the notion that worth is a gift granted by others. It is to recognize the inherent abundance of your own being, the capacity to generate compassion, understanding, and acceptance for the very person you are. This radical shift in perspective liberates you from the tyranny of external opinion, allowing you to breathe freely, to stand tall in your own truth, and to offer your authentic self to the world, not as a plea, but as an offering. The relentless pursuit of external validation creates a peculiar form of imprisonment. Each choice, each word, each presented facet of self becomes a calculated maneuver, designed to elicit a specific response. Authenticity, in this elaborate charade, withers. The true self, a wild and untamed thing, retreats into the shadows, lest it disrupt the fragile illusion of desirability. This is not freedom, it is a gilded cage, its bars woven from unspoken fears and the ceaseless monitoring of imagined judgment. To choose yourself is to smash this cage. It's an act of radical liberation, an unburdening of the need to perform, to please, to conform. It's the defiant whisper of your own name, spoken with conviction, even if no one else is listening. This means allowing for discomfort, for the possibility of misunderstanding, for the unsettling quiet that follows when the applause you once chased no longer echoes. But in that silence, a profound truth emerges. The only applause that truly matters is the steady internal rhythm of your own self-acceptance. This chosen path, though at times solitary, is the truest path to unvarnished joy and an undeniable sense of belonging, not to another, but to yourself. The act of begging for love subtly diminishes the beloved. It places an unbearable burden upon them, transforming affection into an obligation, desire into a duty. The offering, when extracted through persistent yearning, loses its inherent grace, becoming instead a response to a perceived deficit. It's a transaction tinged with desperation, rather than a free exchange of spirits. This dynamic distorts the very nature of connection, twisting genuine fondness into something resentful, or at best, conditional. When you choose yourself, you liberate the other from this unconscious demand. You allow love, if it is to manifest, to arise organically, freely given, unburdened by your need. This creates space for a truer, more robust connection, built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation, rather than the fragile foundation of one's own perceived inadequacy. The greatest gift you can offer another is not your unwavering demand for their love, but the quiet strength of your own self-possession. The quiet art of choosing oneself is not a static decision but a continuous unfolding. It is a daily reaffirmation, a subtle pivot away from the old habits of seeking external affirmation. This path is paved with small, deliberate acts of self-care, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. It's in the setting of boundaries, the saying of no when the world expects a yes, the protection of your own energy from depletion. It's in the cultivation of passions that exist solely for your own joy, untainted by the need for an audience or applause. It's in the quiet moments of introspection, the fearless exploration of your own shadows and light. This journey is not about grand pronouncements or dramatic exits. It is a slow, steady commitment to your own well-being, a gentle yet firm redirection of your gaze inward, and in this consistent tending to your inner garden, a resilience blossoms, a deep-rooted sense of self that no external force can easily uproot. The shadow side of ceaseless craving for love is the subtle erasure of personal boundaries. When the self is porous, constantly seeking to absorb validation from without, it becomes susceptible to every external current, every shift in mood or expectation from another. This leads to a life lived in reaction, where choices are dictated not by internal compass, but by the perceived desires of those whose affection is sought. The authentic voice, the quiet knowing of what truly serves one's own soul, becomes muffled, then silenced. To choose oneself is to erect these vital boundaries, not as walls of isolation, but as protective membranes that define where oneself ends and another begins. It is the courageous act of saying, "This is mine, my time, my energy, my peace," and guarding it fiercely. This discernment is not selfish. It is self-preservation. It allows for genuine connection, for intimacy built on respect for individual sovereignty, rather than a blurred fusion born of desperate need. Only when boundaries are clear can true union flourish, a meeting of two distinct beings, rather than one consuming the other. The constant striving for external validation creates a peculiar kind of amnesia, a forgetting of one's own innate value, a disassociation from the wisdom embedded within. You become a reflection of what you believe others want to see, a chameleon constantly shifting hue to match the landscape of their expectations. This sustained performance exhausts the spirit, leaving an emptiness that no amount of external praise can truly fill. To choose yourself is to embark on a journey of remembrance. It is to recall the inherent worth that was always present, unearned, and undeniable. It is to listen to the whispers of your intuition, to trust the quiet knowing that resides beneath the layers of societal conditioning and the desperate clamor for acceptance. This act of remembering is a profound homecoming, a return to the wellspring of your own authentic power. It's the moment the mask drops, not in defiance but in surrender to the truth of who you are, independent of anyone else's gaze. The paradox of seeking love externally is that it often repels the very connection one desires. Neediness, a palpable energy, can create an invisible barrier, pushing away the spontaneous warmth that true affection offers. It transforms potential intimacy into a negotiation, a test of worthiness that few can truly pass. When you are constantly reaching, constantly proving, you are inadvertently signaling a lack within, and genuine connection thrives not on deficit, but on an overflowing sense of self. To choose yourself is to cultivate this internal abundance, to become a wellspring rather than a parched desert. It's to release the desperate grip of expectation and allow for the organic unfolding of relationships, free from the heavy burden of fulfillment. When you stand firm in your own completeness without requiring another to validate your existence, you create a space of authentic attraction, where love, if it arrives, is a joyful complement, not a desperate necessity. This shift in posture, from beggar to sovereign, transforms the very nature of your interactions, drawing in what is truly aligned with your liberated self. The path of choosing oneself is not a solitary confinement, but a necessary foundation for genuine connection. It challenges the romanticized notion that true love requires a merging, a complete dissolution of individual boundaries. Instead, it posits that the deepest intimacy arises from two whole, self-possessed beings choosing to meet, not to complete one another, but to share in the richness of their separate journeys. This distinction is crucial. One offers their fullness, rather than their emptiness, into the shared space. This self-reliance fosters a secure attachment, free from the anxieties of abandonment or engulfment. It's in the quiet strength of knowing your own worth, independent of another's gaze, that you can truly see and appreciate the worth of another, without burdening them with the responsibility for your happiness. This is where true love begins to breathe, in the space created by radical self-acceptance, allowing for a dance of distinct souls, each spinning in their own orbit, yet beautifully synchronized. The constant external search for love is often a desperate attempt to fill an internal void, a wound unacknowledged. This void, born of early experiences or societal narratives, whispers of incompleteness, convincing you that wholeness resides just beyond your reach, held in the hands of another. To beg for love is to perpetually tend to this illusion, to treat the symptom rather than the source. Choosing yourself, however, is a radical act of self-diagnosis and healing. It involves the courageous descent into that internal landscape, not to condemn the emptiness but to understand its origins and to lovingly begin to nurture what was neglected. It's the slow, deliberate work of reparenting your own spirit, providing the unconditional acceptance and affirmation that was perhaps absent or insufficient. This isn't a quick fix. It's a profound transformation that dissolves the very need for external validation, revealing a bedrock of self-sufficiency that was always there, merely obscured. And in this act of profound self-love, the void begins to recede, replaced by an inner richness that radiates outward, attracting connection not from lack, but from overflow. The freedom found in choosing oneself is not the absence of desire for connection, but the liberation from its tyrannical hold. It is the ability to appreciate companionship without demanding it as a prerequisite for happiness. This distinction is subtle yet profound. One lives with an open heart, capable of receiving love, yet not dependent on its arrival to validate existence. This independence fosters a truer form of generosity, where affection is offered not as a plea for reciprocity, but as an overflow of internal well-being. It is a quiet confidence that radiates, drawing others not out of need, but out of genuine appreciation for the unburdened spirit. The terror of solitude, once a driving force behind desperate pursuit, begins to dissipate, revealing a rich inner world capable of sustaining itself. And in this newfound internal peace, the universe itself seems to conspire to bring forth connections that are authentic, reciprocal, and truly nourishing, born not from a desperate seeking, but from a quiet, abundant readiness. The true cost of begging for love is the silent erosion of trust in one's own intuition. When the compass is constantly pointed outwards, seeking direction from external approval, the inner voice, that subtle guide, grows fainter and fainter. You learn to second-guess your desires, to dismiss your discomforts, to rationalize away the unsettling whispers of your own soul in favor of maintaining a fragile connection. This is a profound betrayal, not of another, but of the very core of your being. To choose yourself is to reclaim this lost faculty, to embark on the arduous but ultimately liberating journey of trusting your own gut. It's about learning to distinguish between the noise of external expectations and the clear signal of your authentic self. This means sitting with discomfort, allowing for uncertainty, and bravely listening to the truth that resides within, even if it contradicts the narratives you've been told or the affections you've desperately sought. In this unwavering commitment to your inner knowing, a profound sense of self-reliance takes root, a foundation unshaken by the shifting sands of external validation. The act of choosing oneself is not merely about individual emancipation. It profoundly reshapes the landscape of all subsequent relationships. When you cease to beg for love, you cease to be a perpetual mirror reflecting back only what others project. Instead, you become a singular light, radiating your own unique spectrum. This shift alters the very quality of interaction, moving from a dynamic of need and supply to one of mutual recognition and genuine curiosity. Others are no longer seen as potential sources of validation, but as fellow travelers on their own intricate paths. This allows for a deeper, less burdened form of empathy, where connection emerges from shared humanity rather than desperate longing. The relationships that flourish in this new paradigm are built on freedom, not obligation, on appreciation, not anxiety. They become spaces of authentic growth, where two distinct souls can truly see and celebrate one another, unmarred by the shadows of unfulfilled craving. The ultimate liberation in choosing oneself is the dismantling of the internal judge, that harsh critic who constantly measures worth against external approval. This judge, born of conditioning and comparison, fuels the endless cycle of begging for love, for it insists that you are inherently incomplete, lacking the essential qualities to be truly cherished without outside validation. To choose yourself is to step off this treadmill of self-condemnation. It is the courageous act of offering yourself unconditional grace, of embracing your imperfections not as flaws to be hidden, but as integral parts of your unique human tapestry. This doesn't mean complacency. It means growth from a place of self-compassion rather than self-flagellation. When you silence that internal judge, the world's judgments lose their sting, and the desperate hunger for external praise dissolves, replaced by a quiet, unwavering sense of enoughness. This is the bedrock of true peace, the profound realization that the love you craved was always within, waiting for you to claim it.